Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? What's going on here today? I don't know. It's Thursday, December 18th, 2025. The president has gone insane. He was insane before, but now he's even more insane. And, all right, we're not quite sure whether everything is working yet today so far on the tech side of things. Greg is reconnecting. Yeah,
and here we are.
All right, and he's back. But you can't hear any music still. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Well, we don't know what happened, but I think we must have probably gotten a Zoom update that reset something to a default setting somewhere in the very complicated system. We had this problem once before, and I think we played around with the audio settings. I think it was sort of silencing either the voice or the music to try to make sense of the signal, and we figured it out. But I don't think I wrote anything down, so I don't know whether it's the same problem.
We just put a quarter in the back of the computer.
Yeah,
and it worked.
But okay. Well, the voice is the, I guess. Well, it's the important thing. I can say the show is over now, Greg.
Oh, good.
You have
We're
to
done.
leave
Bye.
or whatever. But okay, so far no luck. But the musical cues are important, just to let you know exactly when we're cutting out on things. But well, there's also the clock. That's one of the benefits of doing the show live. We're bound by the actual clock, and the clocks are in sync, I think.
Right.
So, unless, of course, we've just declared time to have no meaning.
Yeah, we can be the House. We can decide that today is Monday for the next week.
Right. I guess you can do anything because appropriations aren't a congressional function anymore, and everybody's getting money from the president. And
so you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court won't stop you.
No, they can't, and they don't want to either. And they have 9 gavels, and they still can't do it. I don't think they have gavels.
Yeah. So let's. Hey, did you hear the Utah Republicans are going to try to expand their Supreme Court by a couple of seats because they're really unhappy with having the Supreme Court in Utah block redistricting.
Oh, I had not heard that. But I guess it shouldn't.
They're talking about it.
Me.
We'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah.
I mean, the more Trump becomes unpopular, the less juice these sort of schemes have.
That's true. They may have been saved by the Supreme Court. Like, we don't want to be on the wrong side of history. They're going to look at these redistricting efforts as ridiculously corrupt, and we tried to do it, but they saved us.
Well, let's play some videos. Let's just
right.
have some fun because Trump had this bonkers speech yesterday. He's really fallen apart. And I think it's important for people to hear it. So what I'd like to ask you to do is play the very beginning because the first couple of words are important. Maybe go to like 7 or 8 minutes in the middle. It's only an 18-minute speech just to get a sense of his cadence. And then come back and we'll talk about it. Okay.
And we have to do it this way because you're not going to be able to hear what I'm playing. And in fact, I'm just going to be playing some fun music. All right.
We should do an entire show where I can't hear what you're saying. It'd just be a lot of fun.
It would be a lot of fun
I'll
for
just
you.
be fun.
Right. Well, how would you? You could just pretend you guess at what I'm saying. You'd have a pretty good idea. All right. So this is Trump, and I guess I'll comment also on the visuals as well. He has come into your living room in the middle of prime time, almost unannounced. Nobody was talking about this speech until. I didn't see anybody mention it until yesterday.
What happened is Susie Wiles told him he had to do it because his popularity is tanking.
Or
that actually happened.
She was doing something.
That's not me making it up. That's what happened.
Okay. I mean, that's a good guess. Of course.
He said so.
What's amazing.
He said on the air, Susie Wiles told me I had to give the speech.
Well, then that's not a guess. Although, he may have been completely wrong about that. But I would have, if it had been a guess, I would say it's a good one given how much attention she's garnered for herself with this, and negative attention at that, with this profile. And she had to look like she was in control of the White House or making some calls here. So this is the one she made. So she puts him on TV in the middle of prime time, and everybody says, all right, it must be really important. Now, most people I know went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be him announcing the war against Venezuela, which, would explain the short notice and the weird primetime out of nowhere thing. But I guess, and I didn't see the speech, thankfully, and I usually don't, but I was really happy last night. And I was just posting on Blue Sky.
Sorry, you're about to.
I didn't hear it.
That on me.
And on he comes in the Christmas, crazy, over the top greenery in the White House. And I assume they moved some trees into the side here, but it looks like a fake background, like a Zoom fake background. And they've pasted him into it. And there's 2 Christmas trees and the flags, and there's garland on the mantle where they usually have golden plated, trophy looking thingies, urns and whatnot. So replacing all the crazy gold with crazy green. And although, I don't see any of the weird things that he glued onto the wall. Is this a different? Maybe it's not the Oval Office. They must have. He's giving a speech in front of a fireplace somewhere else. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how many fireplaces they have. And so it's this very cheery looking holiday thing. And on comes the grim, tight-lipped
Reaper.
Yeah. I mean, this is it, of course. And so even if you think, well, he's going to talk about Venezuela, you're thinking, oh, my God, he's going to give a Venezuela invasion message in the middle of the Christmas. Right.
Now we can say Christmas. We're going to invade. Make sure you can.
Yeah, because they're against, there's no Christians in Venezuela. Anyway, yeah, so then instead it's a speech yelling at you that you suck for thinking that the economy is bad and how dumb are you, and then okay, so now I'm going to listen to this because I was also told, I saw in the reviews, he tried to pack a 45-minute speech into a 20-minute thing. Somebody said he delivers it with the cadence of a 20-something banker who's just discovered cocaine and now has a really great idea for a restaurant. I don't know. Let me hear it. All right. And I'm going to hear it, not you. You already heard it. All right. I'm going to roll it here. So far, he's just sitting there looking at the camera, not saying anything.
Good evening, America.
Good evening,
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it.
Now, those first few words are important, so we'll get back to that.
That's the worst idea for opening a speech I've ever heard, unless, of course, you have
the whole speech is like that.
A brilliant solution that everybody now recognizes has become effective. You can't start by saying, good evening, America. Oh, my God. What a mess. But don't worry about it. All right, I'm fixing. All right, let's hear what he has to say.
Inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country. Which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans. This happened during a Democrat administration, and it's when we first began hearing the word.
Yeah, I mean, you get the idea. You can stop at any time.
All right.
I just wanted people to have a flavor of it.
Right. Well, so the pacing of this isn't horrible.
Right. You can flip to the middle anywhere. Okay. Just pick a random place 5 minutes in, and you'll get more of the pacing.
Sure. All right. Here's 6:30. Let's try that.
Real wages plummeted by $3,000. Under Trump, the typical factory worker has seen a wage increase of $1,300. For construction workers, it's $1,800. For miners, we're bringing back clean, beautiful coal.
All right, yeah, so a little ad-libbing in there.
Yeah, but the whole speech, again, it's a rally. You get the idea that he's speaking at a rally, except it's not a rally, and so wrong audience.
And he's also got, this is something I've kind of noticed about him. This has always been the case. I don't think this is degenerative in any way, but when he's stuck at the podium, he grips it pretty tight, but he twists his body to get the word out.
I'm physically doing the weave that I described verbally.
That's essentially it. I don't think that's indicative of anything. It's just a weird thing that he does when he's stuck in one place.
Right, but having played that video, what I'd then like to do is move to 2 very short bulwark pieces.
All right.
Also videos.
Yes.
Analyzing or basically commenting on what they just saw.
Hey, one of the guys is in the screen. The frozen screen is like giving the middle finger here, basically. But he's doing it contemplatively. There's one on his temple. But all right. So which one is first? I
don't know. Whichever one.
Oh, all right. Well,
how long is it?
Well, I got one that's 38.
Play the 38.
All right, and the other one is playing currently, and I gotta move it back so we can get to the beginning. The other one is longer. So the 38-second one, which is accompanied by the comment on X.
Yeah, this is Will Salatin talking about the beginning of the speech, which you played.
Everything that's wrong is I'm blaming on other people, Salatin says of Trump's speech. And at some point, the message is you're a guy who blames other people, and you blame them even if you've been in office for a year.
This.
Here he goes.
The message that people get.
It's
first
the beginning. Here we are.
7 words of this thing were, 11 months ago, I inherited a mess. Okay, so inherited was the big theme of this, right? Everything that's wrong is I'm blaming on other people. But the 11 months thing is kind of a problem because you've been president for a year and you're still blaming people. And at some point, when you say, I blame the other party for this and this and this and this, the message that people get, particularly if they're ordinary people who just, got this because they were tuned up to, they wanted to watch their show. The message isn't like that it's the Democrats' fault. The message is you're a guy who blames other people. Okay. And you blame them even when you've been in office for a year.
All right, yeah, so I get that, right, and that summed it up, right, is essentially the message right out of the box is this is not my fault, but this is our year already, and I'm still blaming other people.
Right, and that's exactly the message that people got. So, thinking that this is going to work isn't. And then the second bulwark is talking about the setting, and I think it's Andrew Egger's observations.
All right, we'll roll that.
Trump is always at his best, like kind of charismatically and rhetorically when he is seeming like totally in command, when he's just like he's working his audience, he's surrounded by his base, he's doing these transgressive moves and they're eating it up and he's just like up there like I can say anything I want, I'm God, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And this was so far the opposite of that because of exactly what Will said right now. He spent that whole speech aggrieved. Like not just sort of like channeling grievance, but like personally aggrieved that the things that he thinks he is doing a fucking amazing job of being the president. And he does not see that reflected in what he gets back from like polls and and all these stuff. He's like, what? How am I not getting credit for all of this stuff? Right. And that is, it's not a very attractive place for anybody to be, let alone, this guy. And I think that because of all of that, like the stuff he's saying, like all that victory lap stuff, it would land a lot differently in an environment where he was like a wildly popular president at 60% approval, where he's like, we are all celebrating together these great things that I have done that you're all really happy about. Yeah. But because it's the opposite of that, because he's like in the 30s, the high 30s, like literally a third of the country's happy about all this stuff. It literally just feels like him kind of hectoring the viewer. And again, it was so loud and so nonstop. He's just shaking his finger at the American people for 25 minutes, basically without stopping. Like, don't you realize all the problems are the Democrats' fault and I am your savior, you dummies.
Well, that must have been, by the way, very interesting for you to not listen to. But
no, I was listening along at home with the very same video, so I have an idea.
Very good. Yes. So that's Andrew Egger, who needed to be bleeped. Young man, how dare you? Yeah. Well, that just about sums it up. Every review and immediate reaction that I saw, and I missed the thing. By the way, it was what's her name's birthday. The English author of Sense and Sensibility. What's her name again? Is it Jane?
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen. Yes. Thank you very much. I don't know how come I can blank on that. Not in this house. And so they were playing all of these movie adaptations of her films, and that was it. I lost control of the remote control, so there was no speech on. I wasn't going to watch it on live TV anyway, likely. But I was wrapped up in that, and so that was
you
much more
thought you were watching Bleak House, and it turned out you were watching a speech.
I was watching the White House. Yes, right. So I missed the whole thing, but then I tuned in to social media at some point and said, "Oh my God, I forgot to look and see if we're invading Venezuela or not." And instead, I found out that he was invading his own brain. And everybody, right, left, and center said, well, the president is on here lecturing me that I'm too dumb to understand how fantastic a job he's doing. What a weirdo. And everybody was doing. So Matt Walsh didn't like the speech, said it was the dumbest.
It was just awful. It was just awful in every possible sense. And I think that the idea that he was speaking to the wrong audience is a big deal because he gets energy from that crowd, and it wasn't his crowd.
There was no crowd.
You told me something I thought was interesting. I'm going to ask you to repeat about the State of the Union addresses.
Well, all right, I'll do that, and I got to turn down all the volume on any of these things in case they decide to. And if I touch the wrong button, they'll go off, again, and you don't hear it, and it's no problem for you, but for me. Yeah. But yes, this speech was framed all wrong, as you said, and the whole thing is like a rally speech, and a rally speech only works. This content only works if there's a visual cue, like a permission structure, essentially, for the people at home to enjoy and agree with it. And so if there's a rally and people cheer, yeah, woo, and there's applause, you get cued. I mean, that's why they put laugh tracks and applause tracks in sitcoms. Oh,
that's an applause line for the State of the Union.
So they do it right. So in the State of the Union, one of the great danger of accepting the terrible, usually terrible, job of responding to the State of the Union, and I point this out every year, even though I don't watch any of them live, but it's the same problem every year, and they've never learned to fix it, is that the president gets to give the speech to a live audience in a hall, a partisan audience, who will cheer and clap and jump to their feet for applause lines, and the respondent, or whoever it may be, and however many of them they may do, is doing it alone in what looks like maybe a law office somewhere. You know, they pick a nice setting. They've tried different settings, but if there's no audience to cheer, every line you deliver,
you're doing it in a latrine.
Yeah,
you know?
Right. Every line you deliver falls flat because there's no one there to cue the audience, the one at home, that this is a good thing and you should be cheering for it, and stick it to them, whoever it is. And so it always fails. So this one, you can give a speech solo in the White House and have it be a super powerful speech. Dozens of presidents have already done this, and you write a different kind of speech and you set it differently and you set the tone differently. If you are delivering an address, we're attacking Venezuela tonight, for the most part, everybody but Trump probably would want to do that as a solo shot from the resolute desk in the White House, and very solemnly. And no, we don't want applause for all this. This is just me telling you like it is.
Yeah, it occurs to me that he should have been wearing one of the Santa's elves' red velvet hats.
He might as well. The whole thing seems
it would go with the decor,
the
way he set everything up.
Yeah. It is kind of amazing.
I just want to tell you, we're invading Venezuela and killing people.
Yeah,
Merry Christmas.
I'm wearing a little
elf hat because I'm so cute.
From among the greenery. And that's really what I thought he was going to do. Is just the split second I first saw my first clip of it, I was like, he picked this scene to announce invading Venezuela? Oh, he didn't. We're not invading Venezuela. But all right. But even so.
Again, stepping back, big picture.
Yeah.
There was no news. It was a rally speech. He had nothing to say.
Yeah.
Oh, he announced that he's giving $1,776 checks to the military.
We got to talk about that.
Great,
one.
Wonderful, big deal. Maybe you'll do it. Maybe you're a liar. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But there was nothing in the speech, and there was no reason why the network should have broadcast this. This is garbage.
Another thing that people pointed out, and they were like, these same networks decided last time, President Biden is giving a speech. Oh, my God, we might lose our democracy. Well, we're not going to carry that. We're going to show reruns. This is too political. We can't be seen as catering to the whim of the president and drop everything at the drop of a hat. A lot of dropping going on. Drop of a hat, I'm going to drop some other hats and air this thing. And then this one, we're going to put this one on live. Now, it may be that they thought we're invading Venezuela. We can't miss it. It may also have been, oh, my God, if we don't do it, he's going to punish us. He's going to sue us again.
I think it was more the Venezuela thing. I mean, it was that out there.
Yeah.
But again, in context,
yes,
Susie Wiles told him he had to give this speech.
That is amazing.
So everybody understood he was tanking.
Yeah. I don't know why she thought this or any other speech was going to save him, but what else is she going to do? She's White House Chief of Staff.
If you're losing, you got to do something.
Yeah, and these are the tools that are available to us. And I somebody did speculate that it was so disjointed and so out of step with what people expected to see, not just because of the content, but because of what else wasn't in there. The theory was that it was, in fact, scheduled to be the announcement of we're invading Venezuela, but Susie Wiles' call here was, we're not yet in a position of popular support to announce this, but we've booked the time. Do something else. Go out there and tap dance until we think it's the right time to. Well, let's hold off on the invasion and the announcement of the invasion and do it another time, but you're on in 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, so here's a couple of articles that go with this, which
but there was a
teleprompter,
so it must have been prepared. Yeah.
Right. I'm pulling this from Daily Beast.
Okay. Thanks, Daily Beast.
First of all, this one is interesting. Networks snub Trump's PowerPoint helper.
Oh, yes.
For pointless speech. That's the headline.
Oh.
And apparently what happened...
There were better ones for him. Yeah.
Well, there are better ones. I mean, another one, I'm not even going to read. You get the picture. Trump rants incoherently at 2x speech speed in bonkers TV address. That's another headline.
Those are the good ones for us. He got generous headlines from, the networks. Trump defends economic record, I think.
Right.
Sure. All right.
So, crazy stuff. But what happened is that only Fox showed the PowerPoint split screen with Trump speaking.
Yeah, he came with a PowerPoint presentation.
And the only references were, Sean Hannity would say, oh, this is important. The data source is White House.
All right.
And, everybody else, Dale Daniels, everybody else says, not to trust the White House. They lie.
Yeah. Huh.
So, no, we're not showing it. So CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN refused to show the corresponding PowerPoint slideshow that went that which I thought was interesting.
If you come with visual aids and you think they're important and somehow you can't show them, if you've ever given a presentation and your projector doesn't work, you're frustrated. You would. I had this great chart.
Now, here's the thing. Let's say you say to the networks, I'm giving a speech and I want you to show these PowerPoints. And the network reviews the PowerPoints, and they say no.
Did they? I mean, did they review them? Or?
Well, they said no.
Yeah, I mean, I would say no without seeing what he's presenting.
But if they looked at it, they would have known it wasn't about Venezuela.
That's true, too. Then they would say, yeah, right. Oh,
then they would say, well, why are we giving this speech at all?
We already said yes.
I mean, nothing about this makes sense, I'm saying.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Certainly. I'm trying to make some sense out of it. And
you can't put these things on the air without reviewing them. For all you know, he accidentally gave you the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Yeah. Although, maybe.
And you can't put that on the air.
I think that they think that they can't. There's a little bit of leftover, I don't know, the President of the United States is demanding this time. That's a thing that we do from time to time. Then, of course, they realize who this is.
But then we turned him down. That's a thing that we do all the time.
That's true. It did happen with Biden. That was the biggest, most salient point I saw of all this. They were presented with a very important and very interesting topic of speech from Biden, and they said no to it. And here they're shown a chart that was probably lying about nothing at that, and said, well, all right, we're not going to put that part on here, but we'll let you go. I think they were trying to find a way to mollify him without getting in trouble and find themselves.
I can see CBS doing that. I don't understand why the other networks did that.
I don't know.
But in any case, this is CNN. This is Aaron Blake, who used to work at the Washington Post. Now he's at CNN. 4 takeaways from Trump's primetime address. Yes. President Donald Trump delivered a rare 20-minute primetime speech from the White House on Wednesday night. The address included relatively little news, but did frame up how the White House would like to sell its record amid increasingly dire political indications. Here are the takeaways. 1, it's all Biden all the time from here on out. This has been a theme of mine. Biden should have done some of this with Trump, but Trump does this all the time with Biden.
I see. Okay, yeah.
And what Aaron Blake says, in case there's any doubt, Trump made clear his message will continue to be a heavy dose of the B word. Trump repeatedly compared his economic and inflation numbers to his predecessor. Former President Biden's numbers were significantly worse, in large part to COVID. Trump got to the point right away, beginning his speech thusly, 11 months ago, I inherited a mess and I'm fixing it. That's going to be a line people are going to use a lot.
Yeah.
Right? He mentioned Biden more than half a dozen times by name. And remember, this is a very short speech.
Yeah.
But it looks like a really tough sell right now. A recent Fox News poll showed twice as many registered voters said Trump is more responsible for the economic conditions at 62%, then said the same of Biden at 32%. So that only works with the 32%.
Okay.
Okay. Number 2, it's closer to what his advisors seem to want, but it's not compelling.
Yeah.
He's not terribly interested in heeding their advice on the economy. It bores him. That's what Aaron Blake said.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
After the speech, Trump asked White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles how he did on timing. And Wiles confirmed, I told you 20 minutes and you were 20 minutes. That's a quote.
Okay.
Right? Number 3, it was a characteristic factual mess. And number 4, Trump's speech about nothing betrayed White House concerns. Very little of what Trump said was particularly newsworthy, but to the extent the speech carried any real news, it was those dividend checks for service members. But why was this a primetime address? In the end, the very fact that the White House decided to put this on seems to betray how nervous it is about its political standing and economic messaging. Indeed, in his exchange with Wiles, Trump said Wiles had told him he had to give the speech.
That is very weird. For any president to say that they're under the control of their chief of staff, and this one, who nobody's under the control of. Yeah,
the break is coming up in about a minute or less.
Don't you worry.
But
I'll have to tell you. Yes,
that speech was not the craziest thing he did yesterday. We'll talk about that after the break.
Oh my God, that's right. And I felt like I had forgotten the whole thing. All right, well, I'll take us out of this thing because you can't hear the music, but it hasn't started yet anyway, so you wouldn't have heard it yet. But you know what? Here's something that I was talking about in a slightly different context that I think may also be of interest, talking about the lack of substance in this speech. At the moment, he's involved in yet another lawsuit in which he is suing to, I guess, prevent the demand from the disabled advocacy community for real-time American Sign Language interpretation of his speeches, which he refuses to allow on, weird grounds, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But what was interesting was somebody else pointed out, the real problem is that when there's a sign language interpretation of his remarks, they end up just standing there doing nothing, awkwardly, because there's nothing to interpret. He's just stammering and repeating the same words over and over. Interesting. Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, $1 crisp bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And yeah, Greg, welcome back, too, because you didn't hear the music, and I guess everybody else did. Which is a strange thing. I'm going to have to figure out what this is. But I got to believe it's with Zoom somewhere, because if it isn't, then it's with Biden. And, it's 11 months already, and I haven't figured this thing out. But this has only been going on for a week or two.
Right. It's weird. I mean, I may have to stop listening to Zoom and start listening to the feed from Justice, and
I guess.
Netroots
you'll
Radio.
Be like 15 seconds behind. But, okay. Yeah. Justice says everything is still okay. So he hears music. So it's definitely the Zoom part of the equation.
It's something about Zoom. Zoom is just acting really weird.
It's Trump.
I may have to just reinstall it and see what's going on here.
Oh my God, I'm afraid of
that. I mean, I got, everybody now knows it's not all that interesting, but I wound up with a new monitor that has a camera on it.
Oh, come on, that's
and
interesting.
I've been playing with the settings, and sometimes I send David a picture, with San Francisco in the background, and my avatar is a cow.
It's there today.
And this morning, when I signed on the show, everything was upside down, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, I thought you were, saying, haha,
I didn't do that. I mean, I made David laugh, but I didn't do that. It just happened.
It's very
something's
odd.
Weird with Zoom, and that's part of the reason the sound is the way it is.
Also,
but as I said before we started this segment here, that speech, as bad as it was not the worst thing that Trump did yesterday.
It turns out that he's super weird.
He has installed something called the Presidential Walk of Fame.
Yes.
Which is an excuse to have his picture twice with gilt and over-the-top gold stuff all around it.
Yeah, this is part of the decoration that also has written in gold script letters on paper and then taped, like scotch taped to the wall, the Oval Office. And
the Oval Office with an arrow pointing to a picture of him, right? You know, so under Obama's picture, I have to read you that because he then installed plaques, which clearly he wrote himself.
Yeah.
Describing each of the presidents. Listen to what he writes about Obama. It reads like a Truth Social post.
Yeah.
Barack Hussein Obama was the first black president, a community organizer, one-term senator from Illinois, and one of the most divisive political figures in American history.
Oh.
As president, he passed the highly ineffective, quote, unaffordable, end quote, CARE Act, resulting in his party losing control of both houses of Congress in the election of the largest House Republican majority since 1946. He presided over a stagnant economy, approved the terrible Iran nuclear deal, and signed the one-sided Paris Climate Accords, both of which were later terminated by President Donald J. Trump.
He makes it
Under Obama, the ISIS caliphate spread across the Middle East, Libya collapsed into chaos, and Russia invaded and took Crimea. He crippled small businesses with crushing regulation and environmental red tape, devastated American coal miners, and weaponized the IRS and federal bureaucracies against his political opponents. I mean, every accusation is a confession. Sure. Obama also spied on the 2016 presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and presided over the creation of the Russia hoax. I mean, this is like museum quality supposed stuff. And this is what it reads like.
Yeah, it's clear that he drafted it, and all of his little grievances are in there. But once again, the name Donald J. Trump appears twice on the plaque about this is a picture of Barack Obama. He was president of the United States here in the White House.
Actually, 4 times. Four times. It just keeps going.
Oh, sorry, 2
times. So Obama
already.
also spied on the 2016 presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and presided over the creation of the Russia hoax, the worst political scandal in American history. His handpicked successor, Hillary Rodham Clinton, would then lose the presidency to Donald J. Trump.
3. Yeah.
That's what he said about Obama.
Yep.
And there's a picture of Obama. And I have to remind you, there is no picture of Joe Biden.
Right.
What he has placed there is a picture of an auto pen.
Yeah, because it's such a great insight.
Because he thought that was really clever. And then he writes, Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history. And then it goes on from there.
Yeah. I did see the Biden one. I'm reminded of, his history with historical plaques. Like around here, he's known for his, fake river of blood plaque that he put on his golf course. So he's into the plaques thing.
Yeah,
that's
and then, of course, the plaques under his own pictures are like, I am God, and no one else can even touch me.
Yeah, he even makes an appearance on the Ronald Reagan plaque, I understand.
It's amazing. I mean,
Reagan was a huge fan of mine.
There's something wrong with that person.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, you don't need the whole Rob Reiner thing to understand that there's something wrong with that person.
Oh, God, well, no, but we've known that for the longest time. Well, I mean, since when? I like people who don't get captured. Okay, all right, you're crazy.
Yeah. No, since he walked down that stupid escalator. But this is Steve Contorno, who is I think Tampa Bay Times based reporter. Says a quick thread on Susie Wiles, having covered her for a decade.
All right.
In 2019, I wrote a story that ended up becoming very problematic for her. It detailed how she oversaw a plan to arrange golf outings and dinners with Governor Ron DeSantis in exchange for 5- and 6-figure political donations. You can read the story here. Here's the link. After it published, DeSantis pushed Wiles out of his political operation, but it also resulted in her ousting from President Trump's orbit. Remember, Don and Ron were close allies at the time. It was a low point for Susie, who also left her lobbying gig and was adrift. I mentioned this episode amid the fallout from the Vanity Fair article for a few reasons. Number one, her resilience cannot be understated. From that low point, she made herself into Trump's most valuable political aide and confidant, which she is. I mean, she's the one that actually gets stuff done. She's the only one who knows how to use a butter knife in the kitchen there, Exacted revenge on DeSantis, won a presidential election, became the country's first female chief of staff. The story of Trump's comeback is also a story of her comeback.
I guess. I mean, one person would say this is an illustration of resilience. The other would say this is an illustration of her subservience.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the same.
Two, many of the people who remained by Susie's side throughout that difficult period are in the White House or working for Trump. And those she works with have always been incredibly committed to her. Some have worked with her or taken advice from her for more than a decade. And that includes Trump's top staff and many of the Florida-centric cabinet members. But she's also won over longtime stalwarts by standing alongside Trump after he left Washington, like Laura Loomer, Don Jr., people like that back her.
All right. Okay. Who's this?
All that said, number 3, your standing in Trump's world can change in an instant. Anybody who's worked for Trump knows this. Wiles knows this.
Right.
From her own experience. So Trump clearly believes he still needs her. We haven't heard anything to suggest her job's at risk. The outpouring of support after the Vanity Fair story is illustrative of the loyalty she still commands in her place atop the pyramid. But all that is to say, Wiles has come back from much worse, and at the same time, Trump cycles through chiefs of staff, and he's pushed Wiles out once before, so who's to say he won't do it again?
Yeah, that's hedging the bets there. Who's writing where we were listening to here?
Steve, what's his name? Steve
I don't know.
Cordero. I have to go look it up again because I already closed that window. But he's a Tampa Bay Times reporter.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, he's in a
position
to know.
And I think that's all true. In other words, immediately after the Vanity Fair stuff came out, you saw a bunch of tweets and other social media. We support Susie Wiles. Vanity Fair screwed up. She didn't say that. And then the reporter who wrote it said, well, I recorded everything. Let me play for you where she did say that. So, well, it's out of context. Well, you may call it out of context, but you can't say you were misquoted. This is an exact quote. I have the audio, that sort of thing.
Right. There was a weird report on CNN that they were like the CNN reporter was almost like making it up. It sounded like, well, maybe she didn't know she was on the record. Like, really? It's Susie Wiles? No. I don't think so.
It was deliberate. It happened.
Yeah. It's a fascinating article, mostly the meta of it. To me, the article actually revealed the opposite. And so I find myself in disagreement with the Tampa Bay Times writer, which probably means I'm wrong because you've been sitting in Florida the whole time. You're probably right. But there's also this tendency of professional political reporters to make them into power stories and the great person, let's say, theory of history, that if she's still around, she must be, in fact, a competent and, in fact, a highly accomplished power player, as opposed to, no, this is just a chaotic weirdo loony bin, and she's remained in his proximity. Like, it's not so, I don't know whether Trump is convinced he needs her, or whether he just hasn't been handed a reason to be mad at her because she isn't doing or saying anything.
Well, but he does need her because there's nobody else competent in that administration.
But she, I don't believe, is either. I read that when I finally read the Vanity Fair thing.
It's a relative scale.
Sure. I read that Vanity Fair thing and I came away saying, oh my God, I don't know how she's pulled this trick. She's so competent. She's not the Hope Hicks of Trump too. She's Sidney Powell made it to chief of staff and no one has noticed.
Those articles.
Crazy. Yeah.
Well, another point that people were trying to do in defending her. Well, they blindsided her and she didn't know it was coming. Those articles were put together from over a year's worth of 11 different interviews.
She wasn't having a bad day or low blood sugar that
day.
She was
or you can't say on this one occasion, she didn't know it was coming. She knew it was coming. She's dishing it out. It reads to me like somebody who's leaving.
Yeah,
it's one of those tell-all books you write after you leave, except she didn't.
Right. And I don't know. I don't understand it. And I don't understand the attempt to paper over it. I thought, all right, Trump will finally fire her. Great. Terrific.
But she is clearly, absolutely, positively an enabler. She is not somebody who's there to try to stop him. She is absolutely part of the problem.
Fantastically interesting point there, too, because in the profile, she tells everybody, no. I've dealt with alcoholics. I know.
Yeah, I'm the grown-up in the room. I'm the one that can really keep things under control.
You just told us the opposite. You are the enabler of the alcoholic in the room, and you know that you know when to duck. You know when to stay out of the way. Everything. Again, the thing I came away with from the Vanity Fair thing, and this was so interesting to me too, is that first, instead of reading the Vanity Fair piece first, which really, a fair person probably would have done that, I read the New York Times coverage of it. Yeah. And it was really interesting because I think what's going on in the New York Times is in part like maybe what was going on down at the Tampa Bay Times as well. The Vanity Fair piece, and there's been a lot of commentary on this too. In addition to the interview, the photography. There's real live, honest to God photojournalism going on here because there's points being made, and we can get to that later if you want, or I could do it
I think
tomorrow. But
didn't I mention the line that came out of that?
I don't know what. Maybe
that the line going around with the photographer.
Yeah.
Was that Trump people who were getting all these glamour shots?
Yeah.
Were saying to the photographer, "Listen, I'll give you $100 if you make that other guy look worse than me."
That was J.D. Vance, yeah.
And I'll make it 1,000 if it's Marco.
Yeah, because J.D.'s going to have to run against him, I guess, for president at some point. That was the big. So I did see yesterday. I saw somebody say, "I hate to hand it to J.D. Vance, but I think he might have made a good joke here because the maybe one of the dumbest photo choices for the subject. I don't know if they had any approval over the photos or not. I guess not." But was Marco Rubio's, there's this shot of him standing there looking like, I can't believe I'm in this administration.
His head is
down. Is that, well, maybe it might actually have been the case. But he's just standing there like alone, like he's been put in the corner and he's looking at his shoes like, I'm going to die. I'm going to drop dead of embarrassment any second. So, yeah, J.D. Vance may have won that one, although J.D. Vance also ends up looking terrible in some of these things. But the thing that struck me when I read the pieces on the air was the Vanity Fair piece. I hadn't even seen the other pictures yet, but the photo they chose to illustrate the headline and the photo chosen to illustrate the headline in the New York Times piece about the piece, which I don't know if it came from the same source or it might have just been a file pic, although it looked like Wiles was wearing the same thing, but she may wear the same thing all the time. But it was interesting. The Vanity Fair thing throughout, the photos are horrific. I mean, they're great pictures, but they capture the horrific nature of each of the people, which is what makes them so terrific.
Yeah.
And Susie Wiles in the headline photo looks like a deer in the headlights. She's sitting in a conference table, and everybody around her is looking evil, and she's like, I can't believe I'm here. What am I doing? So in control, right? The photo at the New York Times that they chose was this low-angle shot. She's got this swaggering grin on her face. I'm on top of the world. And it's amazing. Again, the New York Times just seems like this is what we do with people in power. It's all deliberate. It's all planned. They know exactly what they're doing. And the Vanity Fair one was like, these lunatics don't have any clue what they're doing and how bad this is for America and the world, but they just have supreme confidence in themselves. But of course, Vanity Fair is going to. Vanity's right in the title. New York Times and I guess the Tampa Bay Times too have this default setting. If she's there, she must have planned it. But then you read the content of it, and like I said, my first thought was, this is the same as having Sidney Powell be chief of staff. She's set herself up. I'm a power player, but every time she discussed, they asked her, what about this terrible thing that happened in the White House? Or what about that policy? She either said, oh, well, I tried to stop that one, but that didn't work. Or I knew to duck and stay out of the way of that one because there was no stopping the president on that one. Or I totally support this thing. At no point in a profile of herself over 11 months of interviews does she say, give one example of her actually having impacted policy. And yet down at the Tampa Bay Times, you're like, wow, what an operator. Boy, oh boy, she really knows how to survive. If she's out of there after this crazy pants article, well, normally I would say that would make them look like fools, but I guess nothing makes newspaper people look like fools these days.
Yeah, I guess not, but it's weird all the same. Hey, you know what's happening tomorrow?
No.
Mandated release of the Epstein files.
Oh, right. Well, no, I know that's the date, but you fooled me with what's happening tomorrow, because here's what I think is not happening tomorrow: the release of the Epstein files.
Yeah, we'll see, but that puts it back in the news one way or the other.
Right, that's true, and I like that he has lined up a back-to-back thing. One of the you mentioned the part of the speech was, and I guess we ought to get to it at some point. I'm sending $1,776. Get it? 1776 to every member of the military. And I think he
Trump
called
stamps. I'm sending 776 Trump stamps
to
the Continental Army.
Before we get to the craziness of that, what he said, not only is he's doing it, but the checks are already in the mail, which honestly, that's the trigger language for most people. Like, nope, lie. Not from Donald Trump, but from anybody. But from Donald Trump, it's even worse, because it's total lie. So not only the check's already in the mail, he said you're going to get it before Christmas, which is 1 week from today. Yeah, and there's no mail delivery on Christmas either. So you got very little time to get those things. It's normally he builds 2 weeks into anything, because that's enough time for people to forget that you said it. 1 week is not, and it also means tomorrow. This Friday, Trump will fail to deliver the Epstein files. Next Friday, Trump will fail to deliver $1,776 checks to everyone.
So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to do one of my favorite topics.
All right.
Discharge petitions.
All right. It's become
because something happened here.
Yes, that's right.
And it pretty much happened the way we talked about yesterday on the show.
No, good. I'm glad we were right.
The centrists were really ticked off. Mike Johnson screwed up, got him so angry, they abandoned their own discharge petitions, the 1 year and the 2 year, and as a group, led by Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania with a couple other Pennsylvania people,
go Pennsylvania,
signed on to Hakeem Jeffries' 3 year.
He's the actual speaker, I guess. That's interesting.
And therefore, they got to 218 because all Democrats had already signed on to Hakeem Jeffries' 3 year extension.
Yes.
For the Affordable Care Act. And thereby giving us headlines like this. This is Axios, often a Trump whisperer kind of site. GOP centrists helped Democrats defy Mike Johnson on ACA in stunning revolt. Why it matters. It's an extraordinary revolt against GOP leadership, revolting leadership, I would point out, that ensures the House will vote on extending the credits for 3 years. It's a boon to Democratic leadership, but the proposal is likely to run aground in the Senate. They don't know that. There is so much pressure in the Senate if this passes. They have no idea how the Senate is going to. Well, they already voted this down. Well, that was like a week ago. That's a lifetime in politics.
Yes,
you don't know that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then this is from The Hill. Democrats to introduce stock trading discharge petition next year. Yeah, Anna Paula Luna has one that's Paulina Luna. It has one that's languishing.
Yes,
as per the language of a discharge petition, supposed to be languishing. But the Democrats are going to do their own, and they'll get 214 and invite Republicans to sign on to theirs, and they may well do it.
Yeah, this is pretty good.
This way, Hakeem Jeffries gets to control the language. What I'm trying to say here, the minority leader is running the House floor.
Yeah. And has been for a while.
That's unheard of.
Kevin McCarthy and early on in Mike Johnson's term as well, they couldn't get things together, so they ended up having to do everything by suspension of the rules, right? Which meant
but that requires 2/3.
Yeah, so it meant that Democrats were basically driving.
Look at me talking like I know what I'm talking about. But exactly. But it does. It's not just a majority vote now.
And I'm trying to popularize the idea, and I think it stands to reason afterwards and looking back on it. But this is essentially the situation, reverse the parties, but the situation that Democrats found themselves in with motions to recommit years ago, it handed effective floor control and gave the last word to the minority party. And this is a remarkable reversal of fortune. And it happened, with a tool that just historically just has never worked.
Well, but as I understand it, with the motions to recommit, some conservative Democrats would vote with the Republicans so they could get themselves on the record. In this particular case, what's happening is that Republicans are voting against the House leadership.
Yeah.
And screwing him in ways that are far more profound than what happened with these motions to recommit.
Yeah, because you're actually getting a vote on the floor.
Yeah, yeah.
And
so
the
same, but not quite the same. Actually worse.
Yeah,
in my view.
Now
something else happened too, which was a procedure thing, which
all right.
made my jaw drop.
Ooh, pick it back up.
So now you have the discharge petition. And I'm not an expert on this, but the language is something along the lines of once the discharge petition becomes live, it's frozen.
Yes, no more signatures.
So there's 218 signatures. There might have been another 100. You don't know that. We saw that with the Jeffrey Epstein thing.
Right.
Right. There may be another 100 people willing to vote for it. They just don't know because you freeze the petition once you hit 218.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So then the language then becomes, well, you get 30 legislative days to make sure this thing happens. And the speaker could bring it up right away like he did with Epstein.
Yeah.
Or he could play for time and try to go with the 30 days.
All right.
However, you can do this quirky maneuver.
There's always
something about calling the previous question.
Yes.
And get this thing in the docket to do right away. And the Democrats almost succeeded doing that yesterday. Jim McGovern brought it up, and it only failed by one vote. And the reason it failed is that Dan Goldman was in the well of the House walking up to the front, getting ready to vote, and the Republicans closed the vote before he got there. Because it would have been a tie. And a tie is a loss for the majority. Because there's nobody to break a tie.
Yeah, okay. And then you're right. You have to have a majority in favor, clear majority.
So in order to reject this, you have to have a clear majority. I don't remember what the vote was. It was something like 204, 203 or something like that because a lot of people weren't there. Yeah. But Dan Goldman is walking up, and the Republicans said, okay, question closed. Before he could physically get there and say, no, I'm here to vote.
Yeah, although I will say he was probably late.
He was late.
It is because
he was late. He was definitely late, but he was there.
Yeah, and normally they would absolutely hold the vote open in order to do that. But if you watch on C-SPAN, you see the little timer there. They always ignore the timer. It's not like they ever drop the hat.
Yeah, 15-minute timer. It's now 45 minutes and 3 hours later.
So that it's not really that. But yeah, the clue there is you might be confused if you also watch. You definitely be confused about America if you watch C-SPAN at all. But if you watch C-SPAN 2 and you and you watch them voting in the Senate. The practice in the Senate is, in fact, because there's only 100 of them, to walk up to the front and actually tell the clerk or signal with hand motions to a
like
clerk,
a thumbs down, like John.
What am I doing? What's my vote? In the House, they don't do that unless they're there after the time has run out.
Because they have electronic voting, and the Senate doesn't.
And
correct?
You can vote and you vote from wherever you are. There's little voting machines all over the floor, and you don't come to the front. It's when they've turned off the machines because they think they're done. That if you were arriving late, you can run up to the front and you can say, hold it. I want to cast a vote, but I have to do it sort of manually.
So what the Republicans did was technically correct, but an enormous breach of etiquette.
Yeah. Yes.
And Democrats were furious yesterday, screaming at them on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. That doesn't happen every day.
Regular order, or order, as they say, right, in Britain. But so that's a great procedural thing that's going to make people mad. There are certain institutionalists who say, I'm a big partisan, but I am very angry about this because this could happen to me very easily. And but there are fewer of them these days.
So Punchbowl News, trying to sum all of this up.
Yes.
About how the Obamacare spikes are going to happen for millions of Americans. And then they say, in fact, if you zoom out right now, congressional battles are being played in large part on Democrats' turf. They have Republicans talking about health care. Johnson says House Republicans will spend a good chunk of next year on the issue, a topic on which the GOP is typically weak. Next month also will be about government funding and social programs, which again favor Democrats. On Johnson, the health care episode was a debacle for the House Republican leadership. There is no other way to put it. Mm-hmm. The House will be forced to vote in January on these subsidies, something that's wildly unpopular in the broader House Republican Congress. Somebody described this as a 90-10 issue. 90% of Republicans hate Obamacare, and the 10% who are moderates, are afraid to get rid of it. But that 10% plus the Democrats is a majority.
Yep.
Party leadership is supposed to protect their members from bad votes. The GOP leadership failed.
Yes.
Okay. Then they said, well, we tried to give them everything they wanted and they wouldn't go along with us. And the moderates said, you're lying.
Yes, that's
true. We told you that we wanted this and we were going to offer an amendment. And you specifically told us that that amendment in Rules Committee would be deemed out of order.
Yeah.
You're lying.
Yeah, that was
they
really
said that. They used the word. They used the L word.
Good. Cool. Okay.
I mean, this is incredible stuff, which you don't usually see.
Yeah, well, we're in uncharted territory with the use of all these discharge petitions in the first place. So, yeah, he's lost control once they get to 218, and then all bets are off. We're going to start saying
and then goes on to say, over this last month, Democrats work with rebellious Republicans to get 218 signatures on 3 different petitions, maybe a 4th one coming. And Jeffries played his hand well. He didn't go for the bait with the 1 year or the 2 year. He stuck to the 3 year. He got what he wanted. Yeah, and good for Jeffries.
That's pretty good, and he needed a good, solid strategic win in his column for himself.
Well, Democrats did after the strategic loss of the shutdown, which was really a win, but it didn't seem obvious.
Yeah, he personally could use it too. So good for him. He's got it. He'll need that political capital as he deals with other things. Other Democrats did sort of abandon the leadership yesterday in a close vote on a Marjorie Taylor Greene crazy bill on trans health care for minors, and it was that was an annoyance, and now he's going to have to run interference for Henry Cuellar on top of all this stuff as he faces a possible primary next year. All right, our music is rolling. We're on our way out the door. I appreciate it. There's a lot to get to today. Thanks for helping sum it up because, I was happy to have missed the speech, but I really needed someone to help bounce the ideas off of because you saw it. I saw clips, but hugely important story. We'll try it again next week, all right? Unless you can't bear to be away tomorrow. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, there's still a lot to talk about, and a lot of it is stuff we already talked about in the first half of the show, but we didn't get to the other points of it. On the way out the door, which is a metaphorical door, and without the benefit of the musical cues. Thank you very much, Greg, for putting up with that and watching the clock instead of your usual audio cue, which is a lot easier to deal with. But on the way out the door, he dropped us this new polling result from where? The YouGov polls. Okay. And this is a straight up issue poll. I don't know if I've ever seen this one polled so directly. Is Trump corrupt? Is that just the question? Is Trump corrupt? Well, this is an interesting result. I mean, shouldn't surprise you. 47% say yes. Now, ordinarily, you get a question like this, even when people are talking about a president possibly facing at least accusations of corruption. You'll get, well, it's a close call. 47%, 53% say no. But there's a large chunk of America missing in this one. 47% say yes, Trump is corrupt. The no result is only 26%, which I guess means that there's a large I don't know / no response answer here, which is presumably Republicans saying, yep, Trump is corrupt, but I'm not going to tell these stupid liberal pollsters that I think he's corrupt. But that's your answer. I don't know how you, on a question of, is the president corrupt, you get who's missing from this? I don't know if I can do this math in my head, so I won't. So give me a second here as I talk my way to the calculator. 47, 26, I probably could have done this in my head if I really guessed. 73%, which means that 25, 6, 7% of the country is like, please don't write down that you talked to me. It's Susie Wiles. 27% of the country is with Susie Wiles on this one. Does not compute. Prime directive. Gone. Anyway, so other things to catch up on, yes, but a lot of them are angles on the things we already caught up on the front. First of all, just to head back to the discharge petition thing. Discharge petition's difficult enough as it is, but there are all sorts of weird rules around it. The 30-day thing is the bill you want to discharge has to have been bogged down in committee somewhere or somewhere else. It doesn't actually have to be I guess it does have to be in committee. Does that mean you can bottle something up by refusing to refer it to a committee? I'm not sure. But you could discharge. The discharge petition usually is to discharge the committee of jurisdiction that got the bill referred to them where it is languishing. There's more languishing happening there. And if it languishes for long enough, 30 days, you can file a petition. You can't file a petition on something the day after you drop it in the hopper and say, you're dragging your feet. It's meant to be a tool for getting around leadership, whether that's full house leadership or caucus or conference leadership or committee leadership, getting around them dragging their feet. So you have to demonstrate they've been dragging their feet. But once your discharge petition succeeds and gets the 218 signatures, then that means you've now qualified for getting your bill, although it's usually instead a resolution because you're discharging a rule to get, that's another practice that has grown out of this thing. So your rule for the consideration of the bill that underlies your petition then goes on the discharge calendar. And a discharge calendar, there's a calendar for all sorts of things in the House and in the Senate. And these are the things that are eligible for discussion and, within a certain period of time. Getting on the discharge calendar means you're in line for consideration on the floor, but there's another hurdle, which is that the discharge calendar has a dumb calendar of its own, I guess. I don't know how to put it, except to say that once you're on the discharge calendar, that means that you can bring a motion on the floor to actually do the job of discharging the committee from considering the thing and bringing the bill to the floor. But you can only make I guess I almost have to stop again and re-explain. A discharge petition, to put this in terms that we've used before, a discharge petition by itself isn't self-executing. You get your 218th signature that closes the petition, yes. But what it means is that you're now on the list for having a motion come up on the floor to actually do the work of discharging this committee. And it's subject to a vote. And usually, of course, you'll get your 218 votes in favor of it because 218 members have signed their name publicly to a list saying, I will vote yes to discharge this. When can you bring the motion to discharge that item that the 218 signatures have secured for you? Well, after at least 7 legislative days of it being on that discharge calendar. Once again, you have to show that, there's a safeguard against the leadership dragging their feet too much on the discharge calendar. You only have 7 legislative days. And then at that point, after 7 legislative days have passed, you're eligible to bring up your motion. Right away? Maybe, maybe not, because discharge motions are only entertained under House rules on the 2nd or 4th Monday of the month. This is one of those dumb rules, but they've got it. It's been there for a long time. So, depending on how a calendar plays out, and sometimes, I guess, there's some gamesmanship going on to it. So, but to get something all the way to the floor takes quite a while. 30 days of languishing, then your petition, then however long it takes you to get your 218 signatures, then up to 7 legislative days after that. And then, depending on when that 7th legislative day falls, or if the I guess if the opportunity comes up, or you could waive those restrictions if you have a leadership jumping out of the way, you got to wait for a second or fourth Monday. And of course, what if you're on recess on either one of those Mondays and you got to wait for it to come around again? All sorts of crazy things. And then finally, a floor vote in which the motion to discharge is debatable for 20 minutes. And if it passes, then what happens? You've just approved a motion to discharge some item, usually the rule. At which point you then have to debate the rule and vote on whether or not to pass the rule. And then if you pass the rule, that usually authorizes you to bring up the underlying bill for the real reason you filed the discharge petition, at which point that becomes debatable for a while, and then you have to have a vote on it. There's a lot of voting before you actually get to the vote that you said you were cutting through the red tape to get to. So anyway, now that they've got 218 signatures on this 3-year extension, it goes on the discharge calendar, and then you get a shot at some point on one of these Mondays, the second or fourth Monday of the month, to have a vote on whether or not to really do the work of discharging it. So that means I got to bring up the calendar. And if they got their 218 signatures sometime in the last couple of days, it is December. The second Monday of December already passed, of course, December 8th. December 22nd is the 4th Monday of the month. And now the big question is the House in session on December 22nd, given that they usually want to be out of session and gone and home again in time for the pagan holiday, Yuletide thingy, whatever it is that they call December 25th these days, or for the last 2,000 years or so. I'm just still writing pagan on my checks. I'm getting used to this stuff. All right. Anyway, 2,000 years later, they want to be out of there. Now, they may hang around to avoid more revolt among the troops, or the leadership could read the writing on the walls. I'm not certain which one they're going to do. They could say, all right, everybody wants to be out of here next Monday. No one wants to be around to do this thing. I understand that you would have the right to bring this thing up, and if we use the excuse of the Christmas holiday to block you from that and make you wait until January 12th at the earliest or 26th at the latest to have your vote, you will just about murder us. But they might think we can survive this and push this vote into January. And I guess on one hand, they might say, well, what's the difference? Because while I know you want to do something immediately to make the newspapers, the experts, talk to Charles Gaba about this. The premium increases in the Affordable Care Act are locked in. That's the way you've bought your insurance, those premium increases that you've been notified about are going to happen in January, whether they vote on this thing today, tomorrow, or next month. Now, there could be legislation perhaps later on to refund money to you. I don't know whether that's something they can actually do, but I guess you can do just about anything. So the leadership will have the option of saying, nope, we're in recess next week and nobody's going to fight me because Christmas. They will fight them, but no one will be able to fight me because I can get the majority together to say, yeah, Christmas overrules everything. And we push the vote until next month. And that might work. I don't know. But, they have the option of saying, all right, well, we'll just ask unanimous consent or suspend the rules and bring the bill sooner so that we can deliver for the American people. They can immediately switch sides and say, we were for this the whole time. You just didn't know it because we kept saying we weren't. But we were just kidding. And we're having the vote before Christmas. And, maybe they try something like that. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, except that it keeps the story in the papers. And then, of course, people start getting those bills before you actually vote. And everybody also says, I thought I saw something about how they could have fixed this earlier, even if they couldn't have. But you thought you saw that. And now you believe it. And so I don't know. I'm not certain which direction the leadership will choose to go. I am guessing that Murdery Trader Green was one of the people. I don't know whether she signed the petition or not, but she's been harping about this, the necessity for an extension for quite some time, and jumped off the Trump train. I don't know whether she's willing to go to the 3-year thing or not. But I guess she won't be around, because isn't she calling it quits right at the beginning of next year? So if they push the vote until then, at least one Republican switcher's vote will be off the table. But as Greg mentioned, by the time they get around to actually counting the votes, if they've actually said, all right, well, we tried everything we could to block this from happening, but it's happening, at which point 100 Republicans say, fine, I'm in. I don't know. We'll see. But it's really been interesting. And I think part of the parallel that I've been drawing to motions to recommit, although it's a very different kind of procedure, it also involves having members of a narrow majority be enticed by a too tempting position offered to you by the minority. And I guess one of the big differences, though, between the way the Democrats handled the motions to recommit and Republicans are handling discharge petitions, besides the difference in the procedure, there are some other implications. But with motions to recommit, there was debate inside the Democratic leadership about whether or not they should just give permission to Democrats in marginal seats, or anybody really, but Democrats in marginal seats to do this for their own self-preservation, because in the end there was usually less at stake on the motion to recommit. It didn't actually pass legislation. It actually held things up and killed legislation, whereas the discharge petition passes legislation that's much more consequential. But the dynamic of abandoning or countering leadership is still there too. And one of the reasons that discharge petitions so rarely succeed is that the leadership usually has the respect of more of its members, or at least fear from more of its members. And that seems to be absent in the Johnson speakership. And that was largely because he was a non-entity, and they put him in the job because the entities who were willing to occupy it didn't have enough support, because everybody was afraid of those entities somewhere in the conference. So instead they said, let's put someone who makes none of us afraid and therefore commands no respect in the job. And to the extent that he's been able to run the House, it's just the weird inertia that surrounds all political institutions. I don't know, for a couple hundred years, we've all feared the speaker because they were very powerful and they had an agenda in mind and they were relentless in pursuing it. But this guy doesn't have one and doesn't care, and couldn't have one even if he wanted to, because Donald Trump would take it away from him. So it's the Trump agenda driving it, and everybody knows that this guy is a caretaker. They even say that to each other in confidence in the White House. So, all right. There was that. And then, golly gee, all right, well, Trump and his other craziness. Right, the $1,776 checks. Let's look in on that for just a moment. It might have occurred to you, as it did to me and pretty much everybody else. How is it that the president is simply offhandedly offering in the middle of a speech that might have been scheduled for another reason but got switched, and is just saying, you know what, I'm going to send $1,776 to every member of the armed forces. And I guess it's not every member of the armed forces. So, all right, so where are the technicalities that can make this real? Because otherwise people would say, hey, no, there's this plain language of the Constitution in Article 1 that says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but by appropriations by law, which is to say Congress is the one that spends this money. And where is that one? Section 8, right? I think so. Down here at or is it no later? Okay, I'm section Where are we? 9 now at this point? There we are. Yeah, Section 9, Article 1, Section 9, clause yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of clauses in these sections 8 and 9. But, yeah, it's pretty plain. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Who makes law? Congress. So that's sort of the way we've understood it for the 250 years since we've been doing this stuff, or whatever it is, since the Constitution was ratified anyway. So a little less than 250 years. But then again, that's the way we've been operating on a lot of things for a long time, and maybe you were pretty wrong about this. So can Trump do this? And then some of the details are, I don't think they're giving it to every member of the military. It's every member of the military below a certain level. You know, it's supposed to be the rank and file, the enlisted ranks and lower ranking, I guess, officers, as opposed to the top brass. But still, it normally would require an appropriation. How many of those people are there? There's approximately 1.5 million of them. So we're talking about $2.5 billion, if you do the math, that has to come from somewhere. And usually when you're talking about, hey, Treasury, give me $2.5 billion, they say, well, gee whiz, I don't know. Do you have the paperwork on that? It's Trump. Is there paperwork? No, there never has. There never has been. There never will be. This is a serious issue. And so a lot of constitutional scholars and others, you know, who just were familiar in passing with the Constitution saying, hey, what about the appropriation? What appropriation covers this? There is none, right? Well, right. But, okay, a couple of things did occur to me. One, of course, you have certain latitude to reprogram funds within certain appropriations silos, as it is. Can you reprogram from one silo to another? Usually not that much, but you have a certain, you know, a very small percentage of the budget can be moved between budget functions, or you can take other operations, other Pentagon operations to some extent and reprogram them to this. But this is a pretty major thing. Plus, of course, he promised that it was going to happen in a week, or that it had already happened, which seems like a great way to get yourself in trouble, right? And by the way, is there any history in the United States of promising bonuses to the Army and then not really delivering quickly enough? And how did that work out? Was it good? Did it work well? I guess, like, what if they march on Washington as some sort of, bonus army or something like that? Is that an issue? Has it been an issue historically? So it seems like you're setting yourself up for trouble. But who knows what you'll be allowed to do, for one thing. Normally, no money shall be withdrawn or drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations passed by law. Pretty plain language. On the other hand, how do you draw money from the Treasury? Presumably, you ask the treasurer or the secretary of the Treasury, or both, and it's two different people. All right, I need money from out of the Treasury. Give it to me. And in a normal time, they might say, well, show me the paperwork on this. You know, like if you go to the bank, you want to make it a kitchen table issue. Let's talk about it in terms of personal finance. You go to the bank and you say, I would like $100, please. And they would say, prove to me that you have an account here and that there's $100 in it. And if you can't, they will say, I'm not going to give you the money. That's, I guess, the analog of show me the authorization, show me the appropriation from Congress, and then I can give you the money. So is it the plain language of the Constitution that wins here, or is it the newly robust unitary executive? How could the unitary executive get around this? You can't. But, could ask the court this. How about this? I'm the unitary executive. I'm the president of the United States, and I run the whole executive branch. Everybody in the executive reports to me. And you know who's in the executive? The Secretary of the Treasury and the Treasurer of the United States. So here's a question. If you are the all-powerful unitary executive and you order the Treasurer of the United States to release $2.5 billion, $1,776 at a time in the form of checks to 1.5 million people and put them in the mail, do you do it? Or can you fire the treasurer and replace them until you find somebody who will? And does it matter? And I don't know. And do you need to also be able to do this with the comptroller and the Secretary of the Treasury and a number of other people? Of course, if there's such a thing as a unitary executive, then he can make them do it, or perhaps even just do it on his own authority and say, I'm ordering the release of this money. The treasurer is just somebody I usually have on hand to take care of this business so I can go play golf. But I'm taking it upon myself today. I'll write these checks by hand or I'll order somebody else to do it too. There's the paperwork problem. Like, suppose everybody just said no and refused and then say, you can still do it, but you have to write the checks by hand. Well, that's not happening. I'll sign a bunch of them, but then I'm going to auto pen the rest of them. Anyway, and he could. So now it's a question of what prevails here. And I guess you have to ask the Supreme Court at some point. You could make it this crazy. Supreme Court, you tell me. The plain language of the Constitution, it says there has to be an appropriation or unitary executive. Which one is it going to be? Cage match for the control of the Treasury. We're finally going to have this fight. Or is there a way around it? Well, I don't know whether I'm happy or sad about it. Maybe I'm happy about it in that we're not going to have the ultimate showdown of is there a Constitution anymore. But Defense One has more news for you about this, and I don't know whether it's welcome news or not. Here's what might actually be going on and why he might not, in fact, be restricted by the need for a new appropriations measure from Congress. What Trump is doing here is taking an already congressionally approved fund of $2.9 billion, which was, oh goodness, and there's a pop-up has gotten in the way here, but we'll see if we can get it out of the way. He's taken a $2.9 billion appropriation from the reconciliation bill that was allocated, as they say in their subheader here, to beef up troop housing allowances. They were going to give at least certain of the ranks increased housing allowances because reasons, inflation and everything else and affordability, except that's not a thing, and neither is inflation isn't even high, but we're going to give you this money anyway because you're in the military and nobody's going to fight us on this. No one is going to point out, well, either you admit that there's inflation or I'm not giving you that money for the troops. They're just going to jump out of the way of money for the troops. But instead of giving it to them as an increased housing allowance, he's now saying he wants to cut it up into $1,776 pieces and send it to people and call it instead the warrior dividend, the dumb terminology that he gave it in his crazy pants speech yesterday. So can he do that? Well, in that sense, it's just a rebrand. You are going to distribute $2.9 billion to the rank and file of the military in some way. You're just going to slice it and dice it differently. What's interesting, of course, is not all of the troops, and I think a considerably smaller portion of the troops, could make use of housing allowance anyway. But this way, giving it to all members equally under a certain level, this is the funny part to me, is he's now approving the distribution of this money more equitably among a much more diverse and inclusive group. I can't believe he just approved a $2.5 billion DEI program, but he did. And it's okay, though, because Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Space Force, Yargle, Bargle, U.S. Armed Forces. Everybody, thank you for your service. Here's a discount on a Chevy. That's what we do in this country. So, will he be able to do this? Trump rebrands congressionally approved troop housing subsidy as, quote, warrior dividend bonus. More than $2.9 billion in reconciliation funds was allocated to beef up troop housing allowances. Now it's being used for $1,776 checks. This is a developing story written by Thomas Novelli. Is that how he pronounces it? Senior reporter for Defense One. And here it goes. President Donald Trump's $1,776 checks for more than 1 million troops announced Wednesday comes from congressionally allocated reconciliation funds intended to subsidize housing allowances for service members, a senior administration official confirmed. I don't know if they knew it beforehand, but if they scrambled and figured that out right at the last second, kudos to them for knowing where to go. During a primetime TV address, Trump said he was, quote, proud to announce that 1,450,000 military service members will receive a special bonus, a special we call warrior dividend before Christmas. He added that to honor the nation's founding, we are sending every soldier $1,776. Think of that. And the checks are already on the way. That's where he might get in trouble. I don't know whether they really are or they are not. But really, in order to accomplish paperwork of that magnitude in time to deliver on this, they would have had to know this was happening a long time ago. And nobody said nothing until last night. Hi, it's me, David. I mostly do the commercials around here, too. Have you ever thought you'd like to do a show like this one, but a lot shorter? Maybe without necessarily waking up early each day, or even, let's say, working at it each day? Well, now you can, sort of, and by now, I mean pretty much any time you want, because what I'm talking about is you recording a news story, sharing an essay, or otherwise contributing your thoughts on these crazy times with the rest of us, and with any digital recording device. Make the show your own, as I like to say. Send me a digital file of your recording, a link to any source material, and a note about how you'd like to be identified on the air at KagroX, that's KAGROX @gmail.com, and I'll take it from there. Don't worry about those ums and ahs either. I sure don't, but I'll even do my best to edit your submission down into a nice-sounding dispatch from the field. So come on, everybody, make the show your own. Help me prove once and for all that I'm not just imagining this audience. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's read the rest of this Defense One article that might have a bead on how Trump can make these $1,776 checks legal, although whether or not he's actually going to deliver them in time for Christmas, I don't know. He might think that that's something he can set in motion or have set in motion last night and still get them out and delivered before Christmas. But I mean, really, if you dropped them in the mail last night, as he said that, there's some question mark about whether or not they're going to reach people through the postal system, even just regularly, but finding all of these service members, some of whom are overseas, some of whom are in motion at whatever given moment. I don't know about getting them to people before Christmas, but I guess if they get them eventually, they'll look the other way about whether or not they arrive before Christmas or not. But there you go. The senior administration official told Defense One in an emailed statement late Wednesday evening that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed the Pentagon to, quote, disperse $2.6 billion as a one-time basic allowance for housing supplement to all eligible service members, ranks 06 and below, officers at 06 and below. So not the top echelons, which is understandable, and I guess in keeping with what most people might think was a common sense, equitable distribution of things. Very inclusive, and the group is certainly diverse, and the distribution is equitable. What can I tell you? Congress appropriated $2.9 billion to the Department of War to supplement the basic allowance for housing entitlement with the One Big Beautiful Bill. The senior official said approximately 1.28 million active component military members and 174,000 reserve component military members will receive this supplement. It's just, instead of it being for housing, it'll be for being awesome. And instead of it being a number that's actually connected to your housing needs, it's going to be 1776. That might be great. That might be more. It might be less. I don't know. Top congressional leaders have repeatedly pushed Pentagon officials during confirmation hearings to commit to following lawmakers' guidance for the more than $150 billion allocated for defense in the One Big Beautiful Bill reconciliation legislation. The $2.9 billion meant to subsidize the basic housing allowance the monthly payment to cover troops' off-base expenses such as rent, mortgage, and utilities, known as BAH, basic allowance for housing, I guess. Although I note for the record that he did this in that Christmassy setting, except he was screaming like Scrooge or the Grinch or something, some evil character in one of these things. He's among the Christmas trees in the greenery, but not my fault. Yargle bargle, Biden did it, right? The money that he's sending you is the warrior dividend. It's better that, I guess. Wouldn't it be something if he kept it as well? This is going to be the basic housing allowance, or BAH, or BA. Is there a way to make an acronym for this thing that uses all of BA humbug just by any chance? Humbug is a hell of an acronym, but I like just the BA humbug. We'll take it. All right. So just noting that there's a Christmas angle in all this. The $2.9 billion meant to subsidize the basic allowance for housing, or BA, comes as some service members have struggled to make the most of the benefit. A January 27th RAND report examining BA for Army personnel said the Defense Department, the Defense Department should better assess methodology amid rapid changes to the housing market. That would be the smart thing to do. What about, though, if instead of doing any analysis whatsoever, and what if we didn't distribute it in relation to the need that people actually had? What if instead we made it symbolically 1776? How about that, Continental Army? Take over the airports and we'll give you $1,776. Wouldn't that be better? Not what the RAND report said, but they don't like any RANDs over there. Not RAND reports, not RAND Paul, nothing. BAH, but I'm going to say BAH because it's funnier. BAH is generally adequate for Army personnel, though not necessarily when the housing market is changing rapidly and dramatically, as in recent years, the report said. Furthermore, while our analysis of housing choices and expenditures among military personnel and of their locational amenities points to an overall positive picture with respect to BAH, a substantial, though minority, share of members report dissatisfaction with BAH. But everybody has dissatisfaction with BAH. Anyway, I don't know. I'm surprised that Trump even recognizes that there needs to be a housing allowance. Don't all troops live in the barracks? And then, they get up, somebody plays one of those loud trumpets, and what do they play? The music called Revile or something like that. Anyway, they all get up and you go and you salute the flag, and then you go marching, I guess, and then have a war. But anyway, troops live all over the place and in different circumstances and conditions. Active duty and reserve troops on active duty orders, 31 days or more in duration as of November 30th, 2025, are eligible for the benefit if they're an 06 or below, the senior administration official said. President Trump's administration recognizes the hard work of our service members, that's true, with this one-time warrior dividend. And I know in Trump world, that's a check you didn't expect is dividend. That's like Monopoly, right? You're playing Monopoly, you get an unexpected dividend. But a dividend is payment on capital for investment, and I don't know. It's a little bit weird to say that you're investing in. I guess you're sort of in a way. I don't know. It's just still a stupid terminology. You're investing. You might kill me. That's the investment, and you didn't. And the dividend, $1,776. Thank you. But all right, this one-time warrior dividend, which places funds directly in the hands of our military members and their families, helping to improve their housing and quality of life, the senior administration official said. Last week, the Defense Department announced the 2026 BAH rates, which are set to increase by an average of 4.2% on January 1st, 2026. During hearings, Senate Armed Services Chairman Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi has said much of the funding of the Defense Reconciliation Bill is unspecific and will technically be at the discretion of the Defense Department. He has repeatedly asked nominees if they commit to follow the Congress's spending recommendations in defense reconciliation unequivocally. Others, like Senate Armed Service Committee ranking member, Senator Jack Reed, Democrat of Rhode Island, have reportedly expressed skepticism that the Pentagon will follow intended plans for the funds. They've at least changed the name. I don't know if that really counts as changing a plan for the funds or not. He says, my sense is they've already have an idea of what they want to do, and they'll try to do it. Some of it will be consistent with what we're doing, but some things I think inevitably will be their own initiatives, their own sense of what's important, even if we don't agree or support it. Spokespeople for the Senate Armed Services Committee did not immediately return a request for comment. Some lawmakers have been scrutinizing the Trump administration's reallocation of military funding. Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative John Garamendi of California, Warren, of course, of Massachusetts, issued a report last week highlighting $2 billion, pretty close to the number we're talking about, diverted away from the Defense Department and Homeland Security Department for border enforcement, including redirecting funds for barracks, maintenance hangars, and elementary schools, for the people who have to take their families with them. So they've got some latitude, and here, if they're just literally saying, well, we already have a pot of money we were going to be basically sending to the troops, and it's about the same amount of money, what if we just slice it up differently? But I'm curious about whether anybody did the math ahead of time so that, it could it have been as dumb as this? Would Trump go on the air and be like, I want to do 1776? I could see him wanting to do that, but without actually doing the math in his head or anywhere else, because nothing's happening in the head. But did somebody do the math and said, well, if we gave it out to, what is 06 exactly offhand, by the way? I mean, military folks will know offhand exactly what it is. All right. 06 is equivalent to a colonel in the Army, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force, and captain in the Navy, Coast Guard, look at USPHS, Public Health Service, and NOAA Corps. I didn't realize that the NOAA Corps had a militarized corps like the way the Public Health Service does, uniform. By the way, typically wearing the Silver Eagle insignia. So there you have it. So colonel and down seems reasonable enough. But I guess the question could be, could I do 1776 and make it work? I don't know whether you would initially be like, yeah, I can't wait to give it to brigadier generals as well. But does that, at 1776, is that the number of brigadier generals and down too much? Do I exceed the appropriation? All right. Though they may also have said, really, generals, we'll leave them out. And colonels and down, that'll work just fine. Did anybody say, can we afford 1776 for every single one of them out of the housing allowance? I guess so. I hope so. But I don't know. Anyway, that's a way around it, I guess. If all you're doing is saying, instead of giving you the money we were going to give you for housing, we're going to call it something different. You can still use it for housing. You might have to. And that's an interesting thing too, by the way. If the rank and file of the military has been, and I'm sure that this is the case, that it's not, they must have heard something. We're going to get an increase for housing allowance. Okay, great. But it wasn't really hyped or anything. But maybe inside the military, they've been like just salivating at getting those checks. If you thought, oh, great, from the speech, I'm going to get the basic allowance for housing, plus he's also going to give me $1,776. It's dumb, but I'll take it. That's a lot of money on top of that. So we're going to get an extra chunk of cash to help pay for housing. Thank God. Plus, we're getting Christmas bonuses this year. If that's the thinking, and then you get your check and you say, great, I got that. Now where's the thing? And you're like, that's actually it. He took your and made it a warrior dividend. This is what he changed the name on it. That's all the money you're getting. You're not getting two checks. You're getting one. Will they be like, ugh? Will they be mad? Somebody was saying, there is this. that you just told 1.5 million people with guns that you're going to pay them this money and you're going to do it before Christmas. And if you don't, like, is that a problem? Are you going to create an issue? Here it is. It was Lewis Evans, who we follow on Blue Sky, and maybe you do too, saying, hey, Donald Trump interrupted national TV today. That's another thing. To promise 1 million people with guns $2 billion that he doesn't have on a timeline he cannot meet to buy Christmas gifts he has personally, by the way, fought to make less affordable. There is all of that. But even if they do get the money before Christmas, are they going to think that they were basically in line for 2 of these checks, only to find out that this big, huge announcement was basically him just saying, I'm taking somebody else's work and putting the Trump stamp on it? I don't know whether that's going to make people mad, but it's only one of 10,000 things that should be making them mad. I got to turn attention elsewhere, I guess, at this point, to take a peek in on a few other things. I guess, man, let me open up some of these things and see what I'm looking at. Okay, golly, there's an awful lot. There's a number of other issues, but now I sort of feel like I want to share with you a couple of other responses to the speech that were out there, including some really good ones that lead us to something else segue-wise. I'm going to run out of time, but Friday's going to be a hell of a show. And consider, when I tell you these things tomorrow, how badly I wanted to tell you them today if I don't get to it, because it really seems like it's impossible to do it. I want to give some credit to Zach Beauchamp of Vox for his reaction to the speech and his use of his reaction to the speech to remind everybody who, I guess, it's a reminder if you've been reading his column all along. I haven't, but it's a great, I thought a great addition to this. He weaves it in here. He wrote something the other day that was important and interesting, and I didn't know about it. And he hangs it up on the Christmas tree of his response to Trump's speech from Between Two Christmas Trees. He should have called it that. Between Two Ferns. It was his podcast, Between Two Christmas Trees. The Revealing Pointlessness of Trump's Primetime Speech is the title of the Vox piece. Subheader says, the president is a desperate man. Zach Beauchamp says this: when a president gives a primetime televised speech, it is typically about something of serious import. To make the case for a major new policy or to announce the beginning of a war. President Donald Trump's speech on Wednesday night had no grave significance. In fact, there didn't seem to be much of a point at all. The speech was a jumble of his usual false or even impossible claims, like, we forgot to mention this one, a promise to reduce prescription drug costs by an impossible, because it doesn't work with numbers, 400%, right? Reducing the cost of something by 400%. No, you can only make it free. You can't, well, you could subsidize it. And by the way, the number is down to 400. Remember, at some point he was saying, well, some cases 1,500%. Great response to this, by the way, from The Onion, who posted last night. What was it? Trump announces all numbers will increase by 1,500%. Those numbers, they're now bigger. They represent larger numbers of things. All right. Well, anyway, it was a jumble of usual false or even impossible, not just implausible claims like reducing prescription drugs by 400%, smashed together in no particular order. The speech began with a discussion of the cost of living, a subject he would drop and then return to as if just remembering that it was the number one reason that his polls were so low. Even the delivery was weird. Seemingly under network time constraints, the president read off the teleprompter angrily and quickly, speaking with the motor mouth intensity, this is where this came from, the motor mouth intensity of a 20-something banker who just discovered cocaine and now has a really great idea for a new restaurant. So, we mentioned that in discussion with Greg. Zach Beauchamp is your guy for attributing that quote. So, why am I writing about it at all? Because the fact that it happened at all tells us something much more important. that the Trump administration is sinking and his White House has no idea what to do about it. Ready for this one? Now, this next section is what's made it interesting to me. This is where he gives himself credit for having come up with something a couple of days ago, but not enough people noticed it, so I'm bringing it up again now. The haphazard presidency in one crystal clear moment. Earlier this week, Zach says, I described the president's second-term governing style as haphazardism. Haphazardism. I like that. That's a great term for it. And the explanation, Trump has basically authoritarian aims. He wants to wield untrammeled power, but he has no clear plan or strategy for securing it. So what has happened so far is a series of individual abuses of power, each dangerous and damaging to democracy, but ultimately adding up to less than their parts, in that they have not helped build a durable authoritarian model of governance. And, thank God, but this is your aim. Everybody knows it's your aim. You're pretty clear about it being your aim. But there's a difference between it being your aim and actually having a plan to do it, executing that plan and succeeding, right? Ultimately, haphazardism has put his presidency on the pathway to failure because the main guide to policy is Trump's own instincts, which are changeable and inconsistent and often just weird. He does things that do serious damage to his own political position. I read that as though that sentence ended and broke into two. It is just another phrase in the same sentence, and it pays to read it again. Because the main guide to policy is Trump's own instincts, which are changeable and inconsistent and often just weird, he does things that do serious damage to his own political position. The most notable example is tariffs, a policy that has clearly contributed to his biggest problem, a high cost of living, and thus a significant driver of his collapsing poll numbers. For the White House, this is a very hard problem to solve. While actual policy on many issues is delegated to advisors like Stephen Miller and Russell Vought, the ultimate foundation of their power is the charismatic authority of Donald J. Trump. They cannot contravene him on his personal obsessions, like tariffs or prosecuting his enemies, without risking defenestration. So getting Trump to back off entirely from some of his most self-defeating moves is off the table. Yet, the White House is staring down abysmal poll numbers, a series of schisms inside the GOP and among the conservative elite, and looming midterm elections where Democrats appear poised to make massive gains. So what can they do? Try other stuff and see if anything might work to turn the ship around. Like, say, Susie Wiles' idea. A televised address where the president just talks, yells, really, at the country for 20 minutes. And I just gesticulated wildly and hit the microphone in the middle of all this. That's how crazy this all is. Under normal circumstances. And by the way, Zach does not say, use Susie Wiles' idea. I'm just taking what Greg was telling us and inserting it in there, but I'm sure he would probably agree if he also saw the same reporting. Now, under normal circumstances, no White House would ever greenlight such a move. And frankly, the networks probably wouldn't go along with it. But things are looking desperate, and the Trump administration still retains a capacity to threaten private sector actors, networks, with the kind of persecution they've directed at places like Harvard or the other networks, right? I don't know why networks are left out of this. But so why not demand some time on TV and see if a weird pseudo stump speech will move the dial? I'm not saying it's a good approach. It's not. It reeks of desperation. But the fact that they needed to try such a desperate move at all is notable. It is the latest sign among many that the wheels are coming off of the Trump train. True. Interesting. But also a great introduction of this idea of haphazardism, which it was linked to his earlier article, and now I kind of want to read that and put that on the record. Again, this is Zach Beauchamp from a couple of days ago, the 16th. Trump's war on democracy is failing. Hooray! right? That would be great. And it's his own fault. Ooh, even better. Was the body of the article say, if you want to understand, and I do, how the U.S. government works today, you should study President Donald Trump's attempt to pardon a woman named Tina Peters last week. Oh, okay. This will explain how the government works, which is weird because we need to explain how the government works to Trump. But this is how Trump thinks it works. Peters, of course, is a former Colorado election clerk and a diehard believer in the false claim that the 2020 election was stolen. In 2021, Peters committed a series of crimes in an attempt to, quote, prove election fraud occurred, including, most seriously, allowing a fellow 2020 truther to make copies of the actual hard drives of Mesa County voting machines. A Colorado jury convicted her of 7 crimes last year, and a judge sentenced her to 9 years in prison. Last Thursday, Trump intervened on Peters' behalf, declaring he was, quote, granting Tina a full pardon for her attempts to expose voter fraud in the rigged 2020 presidential election. On its face, this is menacingly authoritarian, the president abusing his powers to protect the woman who literally compromised the integrity of America's vote counting on his behalf. Yet, Trump's order is also something else. Impotent. The Constitution explicitly states that the presidential pardon power only applies to crimes committed, quote, against the United States. It does explicitly say that. We just don't know what it means. But, well, we know what it means, or we know what it's meant for 250 years, which is that federal rather than state crimes are what a president can pardon. Peters was convicted in a Colorado court under state law and thus cannot be pardoned by the president, unless we're all pre-wrong, I would add. The state's governor, attorney general, and secretary of state have all rejected the legality of Trump's order. Peters remains incarcerated. Trump's actions were reported in the New York Times and elsewhere as a symbolic pardon. But that framing gives Trump too much credit. If you read his full post on Truth Social, there's no indication that this is anything but a genuine attempt to do something clearly illegal. He genuinely seems to think that he can pardon her for state crimes. I always figured he would, even though he very obviously cannot. The Peters case represents an especially clear example of what I've come to see as the defining style of the second Trump administration, an incompetent form of authoritarianism that can best be described as haphazardism. Haphazardism is authoritarianism without vision, a governing style defined by a series of individual attacks on democracy without any kind of overarching logic, strategic structure, or clear end state in mind. These attacks can do, and indeed have done, real damage to the American political system, but they are often poorly executed, maybe bad paperwork, I would say, and even self-undermining, preventing Trump from ruling in the truly unconstrained manner he seems to desire. Is he succeeding at breaking democracy? Yes, said Steve Levitsky, a Harvard political scientist and co-author of How Democracies Die. Is he succeeding at consolidating autocratic power? No. Haphazardism, as a concept, helps us understand Trump's dangers to democracy in a more nuanced and precise way, and it can also help us see, after almost a year of Trump's second presidency, where things might stand when he leaves power for good, however that happens. What haphazardism is? Well, I'll tell you. Donald Trump, like many of history's villains, has extraordinary political talents. His authoritarian menace stems from these talents being married to a deep primal lust for power, a desire to wield full authority over others without constraint or restriction. I would hope for conviction anyway. In his first term, these impulses were checked, it is said, anyway, by a coterie of advisors who saw restraining him as part of their job description. This time, no guardrails. Yet, at the same time, Trump is an impulsive man with little understanding of the actual levers of policy and administration. His statements on the topics are marked with intentional lies, to be sure, but also feature seemingly genuine and profound misunderstandings about basic issues, such as how trade deficits work. He is also showing signs of age, of course, with fewer public appearances and a noticeably compressed daily schedule. The advisors who step up to shape policy are not always the most competent and sometimes have agendas of their own that clash with both Trump's public statements and their fellow aides' agendas. Haphazardism emerges from the interaction of these dynamics. On the one hand, Trump unbound is pushing the limits of his authority in ways that often directly threaten pillars of the democratic system. Trump has unilaterally asserted extraordinary powers like the ability to direct revenue and levy tariffs that are explicitly reserved for Congress. He has attempted to prosecute his political enemies, undermine the fairness of midterm elections, bully corporations and universities, and hand control over increasingly large swaths of the media to friends. In many of these areas, he really has been able to change policy in unprecedented ways. The closure of USAID, the unbalanced, quote, deal with Columbia University, convincing Texas to enact an extreme gerrymander, and pressuring Paramount into selling to a Trump-aligned billionaire family. These are all examples of real victories for Trump's effort to assert more personal control over American governance and society. On the other hand, this list of authoritarian successes is counterbalanced by meaningful failures. Consider 3 developments from the past week alone. An aggressive pressure campaign in Indiana that fails, right? The effort to prosecute Letitia James over and over and over, and the resignation of Alina Habba. These are all failures that share something in common: the administration attempting to grab power without a real theory for overcoming the constraints in their way. They could have done this, I suppose, in competent fashion. We're not going to finish this article, but I recommend it to you for reading, absolutely. And basically, you can't really consolidate authoritarian power in a lasting way and hand it over to any successor if there's no plan, and it's all basically, well, whatever I want to do, I can do the day I want to do it, and if I forget about it, I'm not going to do it. That's not a real authoritarian regime. It sucks a lot.
FromNetworksRadio.com.
But it's not a lasting regime.
You've been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right. Well, among the many things that we didn't get to, we have at least the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy to follow things up. Justice Putnam will, I'm sure, hit a lot of the highlights of what we missed. One of the things I didn't get to today, there are more recordings of Trump trying to pressure Georgia officials in 2020. We'll definitely talk about that tomorrow.